In this video, I want to discuss one of the biggest mistakes that I did and also what I see a lot of people who try to go and start their first residential assisted living home. And in this video, I'm going to cover all of that and how to actually prepare and avoid doing this mistake. So if you're interested, make sure to stick around. What is going on, everyone? I hope you're all doing well. If you're new here, my name is Serge. Welcome to the channel. To all my reoccurring viewers, thank you so much for all the love and support that each and every single one of you have shown me. And if you have not yet, make sure to go check out leasionassistedlivingacademy.com, where you can go book a one-on-one mentorship call with myself. You could also go purchase the course and the Performa template and any other resources that I have available there. And you could also book a in-day mentorship with myself where we spend the full day. So you could also go do that at leasionassistedlivingacademy.com. And if you are interested in potentially investing as a limited partner in this space in the deals that we put together at Valley ALF Ventures, feel free to go to valleyalfventures.com to go sign up and have a 30-minute call with ourselves to discuss what opportunities we have available. So if you're interested, make sure to go do that. And now that the housekeeping is all out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into the topic of this video. One of the mistakes that I did that I think is a very common mistake that I see a lot of people who try to get into the space and try to start their first residential assisted living home is the fact that they're usually undercapitalized. They usually don't have enough funding to get them up and going and then also to sustain them while they're trying to fill up their home. And that was something that I actually did myself, where I was undercapitalized and didn't have enough funding, but I still figured it out, and there is ways to still figure it out, which I'll discuss, but it's not a position you really want to start off with. So what do I mean by being undercapitalized and not having enough funding? So in a lot of situations, what happens when you go to start your first residential assisted living home, you first have to figure out, okay, am I going to purchase this property or am I going to lease this property? And oftentimes people cannot go and just purchase a property, and it takes them a lot longer to get qualified, to get the funding, and then to ultimately close on the property while still having the reserves and the capital to go ahead and go through the licensing process, and then also through the period of filling up your beds and getting to profitability. And so what happens, and in my situation, what I ended up doing was going and leasing a property. Now that has less of a cost up front, but you still have to get things going as soon as you possibly can, so that way you're not paying rent and sitting on a vacant home without any kind of revenue coming in. And so in my situation, although I did secure a pretty low lease rate when I got my very first REL started, and it was a small 4-bedroom, 3-bath, and it was enough to get us going. But again, I still had to make those lease payments. I didn't negotiate up front, which was a mistake I did do on leasing, but that's a different topic, and how to ask and negotiate with landlords. But it's hard enough already trying to get a landlord to even lease a property to you for this type of business. But I would ultimately say for people who have limited capital to start with or limited funding, I would go the leasing route. You know, you do a month or 2 months security deposit up front, and then oftentimes you can negotiate maybe a reduced rent period of, a month or 2 free, and then months 3 and 4 in the beginning at like 50% if possible, if the landlord is open to doing something like that. But that's something to hopefully, during that period, reduce your expenses and then also get you up and going. But again, what I didn't do was factor in all these costs. I didn't factor in the cost of what a lease is going to be, what my utilities was going to be, what my payroll was going to be, and those holding costs during that period of trying to get licensed and then ultimately get your beds filled, which in my situation, fortunately, it wasn't overwhelming costs. My lease at the time was like $2,800, and then with utilities and everything, I came out to about like $3,200 a month with rent and utilities. And then not to factor in groceries and all other things eventually once I started getting residents in. But that was only once I had revenue coming in that I had to go and, supply those items. But I didn't factor any of that in. So the very first step I would tell a lot of people to avoid this mistake is I offer the Performa template at Legion Assisted Living Academy. go and underwrite or go put all your numbers together to the best of your ability with a guesstimate, right? You could also always reach out to me via one-on-one mentorship call to go through your pro forma and really narrow down those numbers and make sure those are as accurate as possible. So again, putting a pro forma together is really gonna give you a good indication of what you're gonna ultimately be spending every month during the period of you trying to get licensed and then eventually getting your beds filled. So that was the first thing I didn't do, and that's what I would recommend and highly encourage every single one of you to do prior to getting your first residential assisted living. Another thing was the time frame that it was going to take, right? And so the time frame is very important because if you don't know your state's time frame of how long it's going to take you to get licensed and what type of thing you're trying to do at your facility, you're not going to understand how much reserves or capital you're going to need to get you to the point where you're bringing in revenue. And I didn't know the time frame either. Fortunately, at that time, it didn't take more than like 3 months to get fully licensed. And so, you know, I was able to get licensed fairly quickly just because the home I already had was previously licensed, so kind of expedited things. But in most cases, it takes anywhere from 3 to 6 months to sometimes even a year to get fully licensed and up and operational. You know, even if it takes 3 months to get licensed, you know, it may take you another 3 months to 6 months to get your beds filled. So you want to factor all of that in with what your expenses and how much holding costs you're going to need to make sure you could even get to a point where you can get up and operational. So that is a common mistake I see a lot of people trying to get into the space, is not having the reserves and the capital to be able to get them fully operational to a point where they can start turning a profit and keep things going. And even though I was able to weather that time frame, and I don't suggest it for most people, because I ended up having to be in the facility 24/7 all the time, doing caregiving, doing the tours, doing the managing, doing the admissions, so on and so forth, medication management. All of that I had to do until the point where I could afford to bring on a part-time and then eventually a full-time employee. And you know, those are its own challenges in itself. So I would highly suggest for people to make sure that they have their numbers as accurate as they possibly can and conservative as well. You don't want to overestimate what kind of rates you're going to be able to charge and how much of your revenue you're going to actually be trying to make every month, and also being conservative with your expenses. So usually you could have your fixed expenses and then your payroll can be adjusted accordingly depending you know, what state you're in, what your minimum wage is going to be, what the realistic rate per hour is going to be for caregivers, so on and so forth. So hopefully it gave you guys some insight on a mistake that I see common, including a mistake I did when I first got started. So hopefully it helped. If it did, make sure to like and comment down below any questions you have. And also feel free to reach out to me via one-on-one mentorship call. And feel free to also go check out Legion Assisted Living Academy. And with all that said, I will talk to you all in the next one. God bless.